Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and everything else. Today is Thursday, March 6th, and I am so happy that you're here with us today. Today, we're going to be discussing movies and the history of cinema, as well as movies as they form a sense of community for us. I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm a little excited about movies today, but we are going to be talking about movies today. So we're going to look at, again, the history of cinema. We're going to take a look at what movies make us feel. We're going to talk about the psychological aspects of movies, sociological aspect, how the movie industry was affected by COVID and the pandemic. So there's a lot of things that we want to talk about today, some top 10 lists of different movies, different genres. So I'm so excited that you're here with us today. I've always felt that movies allow us the opportunity, to disconnect from reality. Whatever might be going on, whatever might be happening, movies allow us the opportunity to suspend our disbelief for a while. So we're sitting in a movie theater or watching a movie at home and we just disconnect. And we do believe there that there is a man that can fly. We believe that dinosaurs are attacking an island. And we believe that there are battles waging in a galaxy far, far away. So come back after the music break. We'll see where this conversation takes us. Hopefully to infinity and beyond. Well, there you go. Another reference from a movie. From Toy Story. So it's all about movies today for all you popcorn lovers. Thank you so much for listening and thank you for being here. This is Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Again, good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everybody's having a wonderful Thursday, March 6th. We are already 60 days into 2025. There are a total of, 65 days. 65 days into the year already. And there are 300 more days for 2026. That is crazy that we're already in March. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have spring break. And the reason I bring this up is because as you are getting ready for midterms or the beginning process of research papers, come by and see us at the library. We have a wonderful staff that's ready to assist you. Tons of resources available to you online and in print. So if there's any way that the library can advance your research for midterms or to get going on that research paper that's going to be due after midterms, yes, come by and see us. If there's anything we could do for you, let us know. Again, you are listening to Library Talk and everything else. I am your host, DJ JC. And if you are joining us for the first time, thank you so much for discovering the show. If you are a longtime listener, we truly support your oh my goodness, we thank you so much for your support, and we support you as well. So we're getting going here with our topic, which is going to be movies today, and we do have a research question that we're going to take a look at. And that research question for today is: in what ways do shared cinematic experiences foster special bonding and a sense of community among diverse groups of people? So this is a research-based show. We take a look at a research question, we analyze it, we support it with data, we support it with various literature. And so today our focus is going to be on cinema. So we're going to take a look at a very brief history of American cinema. And we're going to take a look at top 10 lists of various genres. If you were listening to the music this morning, I did mix things up a little bit today. We had Selena from the 1997 Selena movie, Como la Flor, and we had Danger Zone from Kenny Loggins from 1986's Top Gun, and recently from the Top Gun Maverick movie back in 2022. So I'm going to stick to movies from soundtracks today. So you'll be hearing a couple of songs from various movies, and you'll recognize them. If not, we'll let you know what songs we are playing. There is also a couple of announcements. There is a career expo going on right now on the Bronzo campus from 10 to 2. It is in the Gran Salon. So if you want to get to that after you listen to the show, or take us on the go, because you can listen to us on Radio Garden, which is a free app that you can download, and you can listen to not only this show, but all the other shows that are produced by Vaquero Radio. And I do want to thank Vaquero Radio for their assistance in helping me set up every week. So Jan, thank you so much for helping me out, as you do every Thursday morning. And I want to thank you for allowing us to be part of your Thursday morning. So if we're taking a look at the history of American cinema, and I go, again, this is such a broad topic, and we're not really going to go into so many specifics about American cinema. We just want to kind of highlight some things and take a look at some key things that were happening through various decades of cinema, because the birth of American cinema begins in the late 19th and early 20th century with the invention of motion pictures. And from there, it just started to expand. You had all sorts of companies that were investing into motion pictures, but there was no sound. So we have to think that this is an era and a time where movies were just motion pictures that were being played on various screens, but no sound. So either the sound came from a live piano player that was kind of following along with the movie, or with title cards that were being used to represent what was being spoken of within the movie. So it was just a place where you would go to and watch people move, stories obviously, but it was a lot of just reading text and, like I said, listening to music that kind of accompanied the film itself. And then you start going into the silent film golden age, which is between 1910 and 1920s, and you have actors that are making a name for themselves, such as Rudy Valentino, Charlie Chaplin, Greta Garbo, and directors such as Cecil B. DeMille. And you see an advancement in film techniques as far as filming movies, but you're still in this silent era of film. And again, the 1910s to the 1920s are looked upon as the silent film golden age. And then you start getting into the late 1920s, early 1930s, and then you have the production of sound. So now when you go to a movie, you have people talking, you have noises that are being felt off stage, on stage. And so now the movie industry is beginning to advance its filming techniques so that you can have what they call the talkies, sound within movies. And a lot of actors that were prevalent and were very popular during the silent era have a difficult time making that transition from the silent era to now speaking on camera. So a lot of them had success as silent film actors, but when they made the move into now motion pictures where you would talk, a lot of actors found themselves having a really difficult time. So you have that, and again, the introduction of sound. Movies such as The Jazz Singer from 1927 is considered the first major sound film. And so it sort of marked the end of the silent era. And you have, again, these technological advances that are challenging filmmakers, that are challenging these movies to now be robust in their sound and music. And so audiences are eating them up. And if you think about the time, early 30s, 20s, you're starting to get into eras of the Great Depression. And so movies were an outlet. And I talked about this at the beginning, where movies were an escape. They allowed for an opportunity for us to disconnect from the realities of what was going on. And we still do when we go to a movie. We suspend our disbelief. We imagine that what's going on the screen for those next 2 or 3 hours is happening. And when it's a wonderful movie and it's a great movie, we talk about it afterwards. And we form that community. And even since last week, I've been talking about community. Last week, we were talking about various festivals that are going to be happening within the Valley in the next couple of weeks. And we celebrated Charro Days this past Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And with some new events that are happening, the Mercedes Livestock Show and the Hidalgo Border Fest, again, the community. So for 2 weeks, I've been talking about community. And movies do allow us to come as a community for those 2 or 3 hours. I talked a little bit about this when I had my show on Halloween about The Exorcist. And I'll kind of give you a recap if you didn't hear that episode or you didn't hear that part. But we'll talk about that when we start talking more about and discussing the feel of a community within a movie theater. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. So I'll talk about my experience with the movie The Exorcist as we go through the show. The golden age of cinema and Hollywood is between the 1930s and 1940s. Sound systems were getting better. The genres were now being expanded upon. And you had stars like Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, James Cagney, that were making names for themselves, and they were becoming household names. Names like Judy Garland from The Wizard of Oz. And The Wizard of Oz is still a very popular movie after so many years. We have Wicked that came out in theaters this past November, I believe, for the Thanksgiving holiday. And so movies like this are still making an impact. The influence of World War II was so important on filmmakers and the film industry. As we were going to war, as we were going and fighting, movies that promoted and had this national propaganda of wartime themes and patriotism and heroism, that begins to permeate the American cinema. And again, the technology becomes ever better. You have Technicolor that's introduced. So now you have these films with vibrant colors and these films such as The Wizard of Oz, where you went from black and white and then you go into color. You have grand movies like Gone with the Wind from 1939. So cinema is changing, and that is why it's considered the golden age. And then you start to see a shift. In the 1950s, people are coming back from war. Men and women are coming back and having families. And so you have a competition now. You have the rise of television. So now American cinema has to combat television. So what do? They change their way of making films. You have new directors that come into play. Some innovative directors such as Stanley Kubrick. You have new 3D films. 3D films were a thing not too long ago as well. They were coming back for a while. Again, things that needed to rival television because people were staying home. And then you start seeing this counter-cultural movement and a new Hollywood towards the late 1960s. Movies like Easy Rider. And then in 1970s, you have the blockbuster era. Movies such as Jaws and Star Wars that we still watch. Directors such as Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. And again, you have these advancements in special effects. Movies like E.T., The Terminator. And visually, they are telling these stories, and it's incredible what we're seeing on screen. Movies such as The Godfather, going back to that one. And we'll talk a little bit more about The Godfather as we start looking at some of the top 10 lists, because years I had enjoyed the book and I was content with that. I really enjoyed reading. Fantastic. So for many years, I had enjoyed the book and I was content with that. I really enjoyed reading The Godfather and I did not want to watch the movie. But once I watched it, I was amazed at how great of a job they had done from the book onto the movie. Al Pacino, Marlon Brando, incredible actors. And did such a wonderful production on that film. Francis Ford Coppola's directing. And that movie still stands the test of time. 1972, and we're still watching it. The Godfather Part 2 is considered one of the best sequels ever to a movie. The Godfather Part 3. These are movies that, again, have stood the test of time. So between the 1970s and 80s, you have these blockbuster films that are happening. And then you see the rise of action stars, action heroes, such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis. And they shape that action genre that we still watch today. How many times do we go to a movie just to not think? We just want to enjoy what's happening on the screen. Those popcorn thrillers. And in the 80s, you had these actors that were making this impact on cinema. Were they the best actors? Possibly not. But they were big revenue makers because we wanted to watch the latest Sylvester Stallone action film. We wanted to watch the latest Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. We wanted to watch Arnold Schwarzenegger beating up people on screen, whether they were aliens or whether they were humans. So that's what the 70s and 80s brought us. And then you have this shift in the 1990s and 2000s. You have the rise of CGI. Movies such as Jurassic Park, very innovative. Again, Steven Spielberg. Movies like The Matrix. I remember watching that movie and not really understanding what it was about. I think I have to watch that one again because people talk so highly of The Matrix that I've watched it once on a computer screen and I really had no idea what was going on. The action is great, but I have no idea what that movie is about. And there are sequels to it, of which I haven't seen. And then you start seeing these independent films also spring up. One of my favorite, 1994's Pulp Fiction and Fargo by the Coen brothers. So these are independent films, but they were still major movies that contributed to American cinema. Pulp Fiction gave John Travolta a new breath of fresh air. He had been out for a while, making a string of movies that had not been very successful. And in 1994, he is up for an Oscar for Pulp Fiction. So you see this shift again towards digital filmmaking. You know, Star Wars Episode 1 from 1999 became one of the first major films to use digital cameras. And then you see another shift. Modern cinema and streaming services and the rise of streaming like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. And not only are they presenting movies, but they're also making their own movies with major actors, Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio, Julia Roberts. So not only do they post movies from the past, but they're also producing their own content. And again, you have these technological advances. CGI, IMAX, virtual reality type movies. And aside from that, though, you're also seeing this diversity being represented on screen. Films like Black Panther from 2018 and Crazy Rich Asians, they're highlighting these diverse casts and stories. And that's great. Because again, the way the cinema evolves is little by little. And it provides wonderful opportunities for us as audiences to enjoy. But then in 2020, we have COVID-19. And COVID-19, the pandemic, significantly altered the film production and distribution industry. So I want to read an article for you from the Journal of Experimental Sciences, Volume 5, Issue Number 1, page 18 through 12 of 2020. So this was printed and this was published, as they say, primary source material with when this was happening. So this article is entitled The Effects of COVID-19 on the Entertainment Industry. So I want to read this quote to you. It says, the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak has been having sweeping effects across the world, causing many public activities to be canceled or postponed, with entire governments recommending its citizens stay home. While the effects of the virus in the entertainment industry may pale in comparison to the clear threat of human life, people making a living in the arts, especially in production and distribution, are feeling the ripple effects of the virus. The consequences felt by the entertainment industry ranges from lower attendance at film festivals, disruption of film and its distribution, and even canceled movie releases. The financial ramifications will likely be felt by studios, filmmakers, theaters, and more for the next months or even years. Again, this was written in 2020. We still didn't know the extent to what the pandemic was going to do. And we're beginning to see a shift, a change. But I remember those times where we couldn't go to movie theaters. We were shunned from anything dealing with public activities. So it took it hard. The industry really suffered. And they're making a comeback. But as I mentioned earlier, when we were discussing the competition to American cinema, which is television and the rise of television in the 50s, we're seeing a bit of that still happening, where these streaming services are offering so many wonderful and diverse films that people are wanting to stay home more because the movies are expensive. Going to a movie theater is expensive. It's quite an experience, and it's a collective experience that you have with friends, with family, with others that you don't know. And we'll talk a little more about that. And there have been some movies that have come out recently that have brought us back into the theaters. But for a while after COVID, you saw a lot of movies that were just there. Not very good, not very successful. But you started to see a shift in that. You started to see these movies coming out, blockbusters such as Deadpool and Spider-Man, and some other ones that would bring us back into the theater. I can't believe 5 years since the COVID pandemic, but we're still talking about it today. So I'm going to go to a music break, and thank you so very much again for allowing us to spend our morning with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history. I'm not expert on the history of American cinema, but as a librarian, that's one of the things that we do. We do research, and we want to present that research in a format that allows us to educate, to expand conversations, and to make conversations. So again, I really appreciate you being here. We're going to go with some more music from soundtracks. We're going to go with Staying Alive from Saturday Night Fever. So thank you so much. You're listening to Library Talk and Everything Else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. And again, a very brief history of cinema. But I want to talk about now how psychologically and sociologically, movies bring us together. Because as I mentioned earlier, we're sitting in a movie theater or we're at home, and there is a reason why we watch these movies. Because again, we want to escape. We want to view the work by this actor that we're interested in, or an actress that we like, and we go and watch any movie that they come out in. And so movies, when we go to them, they give us this emotional connection. We laugh together. We have jump scares together. We feel empathy for some of the characters. And there's that common ground of why we go in these shared narratives. When you go to a movie that is going to cover something that you're interested in, that's why we go. And you know, sometimes going into some of those movies is going to be sad. It's going to make you that is being lifted with balloons. The movie Up, the previews just have a house that is being lifted with balloons. So I had no idea walking into Up what it was going to be about. And I don't want to ruin or spoil anything for you, but there's a scene at the very beginning of the movie where it has no dialogue. It's just visual images. And it takes us to a place that is very sad. And I remember sitting in a movie theater and just hearing a bunch of people sniffle and trying to breathe. If you've seen the movie Up, I think you know what scene I'm talking about at the beginning of the film. If you've never seen it, highly recommend it. But brace yourself, because if you're going in thinking it's a movie about, again, a house that's being lifted by balloons, which it is, but there's so many other layers to that movie. But there's a scene at the beginning that kind of throws you for a loop, and I had no idea walking into the theater that that was going to happen. So we go to these movies expecting to laugh, expecting to cry, but sometimes we get thrown for a loop. And then you have, as I mentioned earlier, movies like The Black Panther and this cultural dialogue that is allowed to take place after the film. Conversations that are allowed to happen. I talked last week about going to the Charro Days Carnival here in Brownsville. And if you didn't attend on Saturday, and I know I exaggerated by saying don't go to school the next day, that next Monday, because you're going to be left out. And that's sometimes what would happen with some movies as well. One movie that I've never seen to this day is Terminator 2. And everybody talks so highly about that movie, the special effects, the action, the story, and I've never seen that movie. And that movie came out in the summer of 1991. And I was going to be a sophomore in high school. I know I'm dating myself. And I went back to school that summer, and it seems like everybody was talking about Terminator 2. And I had nothing to talk about because I hadn't seen it. And to this day, I still haven't seen it. So I have conversations with friends about, oh, top movies. Like, oh, Terminator 2. I was like, I've never seen that movie. And they're like, you've never seen that movie? I've never seen it. I started watching it on Netflix. I didn't continue. I've seen Terminator 1, but I've never seen Terminator 2. And that's what, again, that dialogue brings us together. And that group dynamic that we get to talk and joke around with our friends and talk about different scenes and talk about different parts of the movie. And these influences sometimes that touch us and our senses. And again, we cry, we laugh together. And there are scenes in movies where we are just taken aback because we were not expecting. I remember watching Avengers in that theater. And again, this is pre-COVID. There's cheering, there's people, just the joy that you felt in that theater. And again, this is pre-COVID. Again, coming together as a community, even if it's for those 2 or 3 hours. And again, it allows us an opportunity to gather socially. You go to a movie festival, an outdoor festival where they're showing movies. People are enjoying themselves. Have you ever gone to a drive-in theater? Speaking of drive-in theaters, there's one here in the Valley, Wesmer, up there between Mercedes and Weslaco. That's still in operation. It had been a couple of years because we had some drive-in theaters here in Bronzeville that I had gone to a drive-in. Went, and it was quite an experience. A fun one. But I don't think you go for the movie because everybody is just hanging out. But it's a wonderful experience. I think one of the things that I like about movies is that globalization. And not every movie, but you have these movies that, and I'll give you an example. One of my favorite movies, Star Wars, where I was watching a documentary, about Star Wars, and they were showing in this documentary the lines of people that were waiting in Mexico City for the movies to premiere. Transformers. Movies such as that, that in Jurassic Park that are played all over the world. So again, this cultural influence of American cinema and this globalization. And it brings us together. And there is a collective experience when you go to a movie. Seems like we have those same cues when to laugh, when to cry. And I'll give you an example of something. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. And it's a movie-based podcast. And they were talking about the movie The Hangover that came out in 2009. And one of the hosts was saying that when he went to the theater, it was a Saturday night, it was full, and everybody was laughing at the various parts of the movie. And it is a funny movie. The other host was talking about how he watched it on DVD at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at home by himself. And he didn't know when to laugh. So again, this collective experience, is it we're laughing because the rest of the people are laughing? Or are we really enjoying the humor behind it? Or the sadness? We can go to a movie theater or we can watch a movie at home. And again, if it's a powerful, powerful film, we're going to feel the emotion of that. And there are so many movies that I watch over and over again that I can pick up at any time, and I'm still going to enjoy it. Even though I know what the script is going to be, even though I know the scenes, even though I know what's going to happen and how it's going to end, but I still enjoy the movie. What I wanted to do right now is I wanted to go over various top 10 lists. And so the first one I'm going to take a look at is the American Film Institute, AFI. And this is what they consider. This is the American Film Institute's top 10 movies of all time. Okay, started with number 10. And this list actually goes to 100, but I didn't bring all 100. I just brought the top 10. So these are the top 10. Some of these I have seen, some of these I have not. If you've seen them, hopefully you have some wonderful memories of them. I'm going to give you the dates as well. And some of the dates are, I mean, they're older movies, and you're going to see. But if you've seen them and you have great memories, that's awesome. Again, this is what movies do for us. So according to the AFI, the top 10 list of movies, top 10 of all time include number 10, Singing in the Rain from 1952, Schindler's List from 1993. I have seen that one. On the Waterfront from 1954, The Graduate from 1967, The Wizard of Oz from 1939, Lawrence of Arabia 1962, Gone with the Wind 1939, The Godfather, 1972, again, one of my favorite movies. Casablanca from 1942. And number one, according to AFI, is Citizen Kane with Orson Welles from 1941. And maybe some of you are movie aficionados and you agree with this list. And maybe some of you don't. I have not seen many of these movies. I've heard of them because they were classics in their own right. But I haven't seen many of them on this list. Okay, so let's shift a little bit to top 10 comedies according to Forbes.com. So Forbes did a survey, and these are the top 10 comedies according to them. Some of these I have seen, and I'll tell you which ones. I don't know why I'm laughing without even kind of going over the list here. And let's see if you agree. Number 10, according to Forbes.com, is Bridesmaids from 2011. I've seen that. Office Space, 1999. I recently saw that, and it is pretty funny. Number 8, Airplane from 1980s. Another one of my favorite movies. Number 7, I've never heard of this one. Sullivan's Travels, and that's from 1941. And number 6 is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I have never seen that one either, from 1975. I worked with someone that could recite that movie line by line. He really liked that movie, the Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Number 5 is The Jerk. I believe I may have missed number 6. Number 6 is actually Coming to America. Coming to America from 1988 with Eddie Murphy, and that is a really funny movie. I can watch that one as well anytime they're showing it. Number 5 is The Jerk, and number 3 is Friday. Number 2 is Dr. Strangelove, and number 1 is Young Frankenstein. So I may have missed number 4 here, but I don't know if you agree with that list. There are some funny movies and maybe some funnier movies, including, for me, Dumb and Dumber from 1994. But again, this is according to Forbes.com, their list of top comedies. Okay, so now let's look at top 10 dramas. Okay, these are according to the Internet Movie Database. So I wanted to bring various lists that represented various genres. And so this, according to the Internet Movie Database, is the top 10 dramas. And they are, I'm looking at this list and I don't know if I agree with them, but let's go down this list. 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I have seen with Jack Nicholson. American History X from 1988, that is a wonderful movie as well. Goodfellas from 1990, another great movie. The Godfather Part 2 from 1974. Batman Begins from 2005. I don't know about that one, but this is according to the Internet Movie Database, the top 10 dramas. 1993's Schindler's List. 1999's American Beauty. 1972's The Godfather. 1994's Shawshank Redemption. And 1994's Forrest Gump. 1994 was a big year for movies. You had some major films, including Shawshank Redemption, Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction. So 1994, a very big movie a year, excuse me, for movies. We're going to go to a music break, and when we come back, I'm going to give you my top 10 movies and one of my favorite parts of the show where I went out and asked a survey question, what is your favorite movie and why? So the responses are great, and so stick with us. And we're going to go to a music break. We're going to go and listen to Surrender by Cheap Trick. This is one of my favorite songs, and I was wondering what movie it came from, and according to what I found, it is from a movie I'll give you back after the break. Thank you so much again. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. I'm always amazed at how fast the time goes when we're on this show together. It's already kind of run down its time. And I wanted to go over my top favorite movies. Again, no particular order, but these are some of my favorite movies. You may agree, you may not, but I wanted to share my experience with some of these movies because I'm going to mention one of them where collectively we did have an experience here in Bronzeville and in the Rio Grande Valley, so I'll mention that one. But in no particular order, Star Wars, the original Episode 4, Goodfellas, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and when Pulp Fiction came out, I didn't see it in the movie theaters. I saw it on, again, VHS, for those of you that remember that. And I remember going to Blockbuster Video, again, if you remember that, and renting Pulp Fiction a couple of times because I could not figure out what was happening in that movie and what that movie was about. Finally, when I figured it out, when I figured what was happening and how it had been filmed, it became one of my favorite movies, and that's something that I can watch anytime. Pulp Fiction from 1994. Dumb and Dumber. That is another one of my favorite films that I can watch from wherever it is on, whatever point in the film it is on. I still know the jokes, and I still laugh. I know what's coming up, and I still laugh. Dumb and Dumber. Back to the Future. Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies. I can watch that anytime they're showing it. It's such a wonderful film. Avengers Infinity War, which is newer, but I really enjoyed that one. And I think what I enjoyed about that one was, again, the experience in a movie theater and that collective gasp, that collective cheering that the audience really got behind when that movie came out. Another one of my favorite films, National Lampoon's Vacation with Chevy Chase. I'm laughing just thinking about it right now, because it is such a wonderful film, so funny. So National Lampoon's Vacation. Superman 2, one of the original comic book based movies. I really like Christopher Reeve in that movie, and it's a wonderful film. I actually ended up buying that one on DVD back in the day. And now you can watch it on HBO Max, but I love Superman 2. And I talked about the shared experience, and that movie that I'm going to discuss and the shared experience is Batman's The Dark Knight. And the reason I talk about the shared experience is because Bronzeville and the Rio Grande Valley in 2008, when that movie came out, had just gone through Hurricane Dolly. So there had been some damage to some of the trees, some of the homes, and that movie came out around that summer. Oh, it came out in that summer, excuse me, around the time where the hurricane had hit. And it wasn't, I mean, obviously every hurricane is disastrous, but we kind of felt a brunt of it. We didn't have a direct hit from it, but we had some damage to the valley. And when we were finally able to go out to the theaters when they reopened, The Dark Knight was playing. And I remember going on a Thursday night to that movie, and the theater was packed. We wanted to get out of our homes. We wanted to get out of this shelter in place that we had been placed under. And so I remember that movie well because of the hurricane, because of Heath Ledger's performance as a Joker, and because it was a time where we were allowed to finally go out. The roads had been cleared, light had been restored, and we were able to go to the movies. And I remember going straight to watch Batman The Dark Knight, and to this day, I still enjoy that movie.
I can watch Heath Ledger's performance over and over again. He posthumously won the Oscar for playing the Joker, and it was well deserved. And the movie itself is just incredible. But I think that's what takes me back to 2008 is us going through that hurricane, coming out well and fine from it, with little damage, but us being able to go to the movie theater shortly after it happened and us just enjoying the film. And again, we talked about that at the beginning, about disconnecting. And that collective feeling of us cheering and us enjoying the film together. That's, I think, why we go to the movie theater. So one of my favorite parts of the radio program is when I go out and I ask questions to people that I know. So today's question was, what is your favorite movie and why? So here are the responses. The Sandlot, because of the narration style. Next person said The Wedding Planner. It reminds me of my own wedding planning. Another person said anything with the Avengers. Somebody else said The Proposal because it's really funny. Casablanca because it is a classic. And Mamma Mia and any movie within the Scream franchise. So I really enjoy going out there and asking these questions. And sometimes it lends itself, other times it doesn't. But this was one of those situations where it did. So I thank you so very much. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of history of American cinema, as well as talking about the sociological and psychological aspects of film and why we go to the movie theater. We go to the movies, and kind of a side note here, it is expensive sometimes to go to the movies. You know, the tickets and some of the snacks and some of the things that we invest into a movie, and hopefully it's good. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the popcorn is better than the movie. But we go to these movies, and I've seen people sneak things in. And I'm not advocating for that. I'm not saying that you should. But kind of a story that I wanted to share with you is that we went with my family to go watch Toy Story 3, and it was an early showing. It's about a 10:30 in the morning showing, and went to the mall. And there's a food court across from the movie theater, and the girls were hungry, and so what do you guys want? And there's a pizza. I'm like, well, I don't know if we're gonna be able to eat before the movie, so why don't we just sneak it in? And again, I was like, oh man, I don't want to sneak in slices of pizza. So I still went to the pizza place, and I guess the guy that was helping me out, he saw that I kept looking at the movie theater, and he asked me, "Are you going to the movies?" And I go, "Yes." He's like, "I'll take care of you." So he goes to the back. He has pizzas, and somehow he folded them into this to-go plate to where I could sneak it into the movie. And again, please, I'm not telling you should sneak food into the movie theater. I'm not. But he said, "I got you." And I go, "Have you guys done this a lot?" He's like, "Yep, do it all the time." And so I remember sneaking this food into the movie theater, and my girls ate pizza from the food court. And I had a friend who, her mother was the manager at the Dollar movie theater that we had here in Bronzeville. It no longer exists, but we had a Cinemark Dollar theater, and she would tell me that stories of what her mother and the rest of the workers would find as far as food that was left behind. Burger King wrappers, Big Mac boxes. And I remember going to the movie theater, and I was on this health kick at one point where I'm like, no, I'm not going to eat popcorn. I'm not going to eat popcorn. I'm going to eat a peach. And that was just that one time. I had never ate a peach or fruit anymore at a movie theater. It was popcorn or nothing. And I remember people taking food, and you would hear the opening of soda cans, and then people would knock those cans over, and people would take food, and I mean, we would take food as well. And so it was quite an experience going to the Dollar Theater. And I remember just bags people would pull out from their purses and from their pockets of burgers and like I said, in my case, pizza. I think somebody took it too far when they started setting up a barbecue pit in the back. I think at that point we knew it was a little too much. I'm just kidding. Thank you so very much, everybody, for listening to Library Talk and everything else. I always enjoy spending my time with you, and thank you so much if you are a first-time listener. We appreciate that. And if you are a long-time listener, we truly support you being part of the show from the very beginning. We're going to end the show today with Sunflower from the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. And again, we were trying to stick to soundtrack music, and I think we did a good job. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station.